Good morning, students. Welcome back to class of business studies. Today we are at the conclusion stage of this chapter, so I think you'll be quite delighted with this conclusion part of this chapter. But last but not the least, we have the most important part as to the sixth point of the chapter, factors to be considered while starting a business. You can refer to page 24 of the text. After having studied the concept of business, the types of business activities, the classification of business activities, what are the objectives of business, what are the business risks, finally we come to the last stage of the chapter as to if a person needs to start a business, what should be the factors that he has to keep in mind. It's a very logical question. For any person who needs to start a business, obviously he needs some kind of planning. Anything that you do, any action that you want to pursue, there has to be some planning. Suppose you have planned today to solve your exercises, so you will have some strategies in mind as to when would you start to sit and how long you want to take to finish it. So certain framework is always kept in your mind when you do some action, take up some action. So starting a business, obviously where you're putting a lot of investment, your capital, your money. So a lot of good planning needs to be taken into consideration. A lot of factors have to be considered before one begins to start the business. So obviously it would be planning out of what kind of product you want to make, or you want to process, or you want to just buy out from the outside market and then sell it out to the people, or whether which product would it be, is it doing well in the market, are there rival companies, is your product innovative enough. And then if you want to procure, when you want to process, then you will require whether some machinery, some tools, some devices, whether you are able to buy those physical resources, whether you have enough of finance with you. You will also require some labor, workers, skilled, semi-skilled, or some managerial persons. So you have to pay them. So you require finance for all these resources before you plan out to start a business. Then where would you put up your office? Where would be your plant, your factory? Whether it is close enough to the raw material where they are available, or whether your distribution is good enough and close enough to the market area. Whether what are the different tax laws. So a lot of things have to be kept in mind. So these are the factors that we are going to study now. So there are around, you can see, 10 points, and each point, when you relate in your, suppose you are asked a question, what are the factors to be considered by anyone who wants to start a business, these are the points that you have to note down, but under each point there should be some explanation. I have written some point, you can just say some highlights to understand the point here, but when you write the answer, your highlights should be in a proper sentence form and in a proper explanatory manner. First point, selection of a line business. As I told you, you need to know what kind of business it is, whether it's an industry, you remember classification of business, whether you're involved into production of any product, where you're producing it, or whether you're buying a raw material and then you're for the processing on it, or whether it's just a trade activity, you just want to buy a product and a ready product and sell it out. Then what kind of profits you will be able to make, whether it has good margin, whether it has good market requirements in the market. Like for the moment, the kind of the scenario now, so a lot of demand is there for sanitizers. So obviously those people who are into such business of making such sanitizers will have a good demand for the product. But if you are into some ornamental product now, so there won't be much demand for the moment. Then what kind of technology is required, whether are you able, whether it is feasible to get that technology, or whether you require some expert people to handle the technology, whether you are able to afford the expert people. So all those things will have to be kept in mind. Whether the interest, first of all, whatever is the strategy scenario at the market, but are you interested in that kind of product making, or whether you yourself have a good knowledge and capability. So that capability of the entrepreneur is very important when selecting the line of business. Next point is size of the firm. Obviously you need to know how much big your you can say spread of spread of your business would be, whether you determine the production level, whether it can be say production of some 100 units, of 500 or 5000, or a very large. Then according to that you require that kind of technology, you require that kind of machinery, and then of course you require that kind of finance. So everything is related: demand for the product, capital available, the market conditions, whether the market conditions, after employing so much of capital, if the market conditions are not stable, like you've already studied the business risk, if the business risk is too high, then you have to have a second thought whether you should go for such kind of product making, or whether it can be at a small scale to start with, if you don't want to invest a large amount of money. So all these things have to be kept in mind. Next is choice of form of ownership. Ownership means when you own a business, you are either called sole proprietor, or it can be a partnership form, or it can be a company. Now all these we are going to study in our next chapter. Our next chapter would be about studying different types of organizations, whether sole proprietor, partnership, or a joint stock company. So when you study these, you will know there are many factors again you have to keep in mind when you decide you want to be sole proprietor. Means the only owner. For partnership obviously means there are some more than two people involved, where they share their they pull in their money and they share the profits, or it is in a company forms. These things we are going to study in the next chapter. As far as selecting this kind of organization, it will depend upon the liability that you will bear. Liability means in case of any loss, how are you going to recover the loss, whether they will use your own assets, your own other properties to cover the losses or not. Then how much of profit you want to get in, because if you are the only proprietor, sole proprietor, then all the profit is yours. If it is a partnership, then the profit will have to be divided. Then forming any of these organizations, what are the legal formalities, which is simpler? Obviously sole proprietorship is simpler with less formalities, but at the same time there are risks also more. There are limitations also. You can't get enough finance on your own. So a lot of things are to be kept in mind when you decide which kind of business organization you will want to start. Whether the business remains for long. If it's a company, it remains long, because even if in case of sole proprietor, you are the only person handling the business, and if something happens wrong with you, then your business stops. So the continuity is not long. And transferability of interest, same thing. Something happens to you, it cannot be transferred. Whereas in case of partnership, if you have some other people as your partners, if they want to quit, you can go for another partner, or maybe if you don't get a new partner, you will have to dissolve your partnership firm. So that is what happens. Whether it depends on each one has his own limitations and own benefits. Location of the business enterprise. Obviously you have to also decide the place of your office, where your office would be, your location of the plant, your factory, and it will depend upon the availability of the raw material, so that you reduce your transportation cost, and also whether the manpower required, labor is easily available, the workers are available. Then what about the power supply, the electricity, whether it's in a economic zone. So if you put up a plant in an economic zone, you get concession rates of electricity charges. Transportation cost has to be thought about. Then whether the market, the banks, the warehouses are close enough, whether communication network is good enough, and whether the demand for the product, the market area is near enough for the smooth distribution of the product. So as far as putting up the office and the plant is concerned, you have to keep in mind all these facts. Next is financing the proposition. As you are going to invest into the purchase of machinery, equipment, tools, hiring of people, so you require good finance, whether you have finance resources, or whether you require, or you may have to approach the banks, like you've already studied in aids to trade banking and finance institutions, so they are there to provide you loans. Now those loans can be again for long term, short term, so all that has to be planned out, because and whether you require the money to buy the plant and machinery, so it will be a long term investment, so you will have to go for a loan for a long term, say around 15 years, 20 years, 25 years. Or if it's you already have bought out all these plant and machinery, but now you require extra money for your day-to-day expenses of your business, then you require nominal amount, like compared to other requirements, it will be lesser. It could be around 5 lakh, 10 lakh. So these are called short term loans, so they could be around for 1 year or 2 years. So accordingly you have to decide what kind of loan, how long you're going to keep the loan, then what is the cost of each loan. On different institutions, banks, they have their own rate of interest, and whether you need to also keep some mortgage of your property, so what kind of mortgage is available, and how much amount will be available from the bank, what is the period for which you are going to keep, what is the cost, the interest rate, all those things have to be worked out. Next is physical facilities, like same thing, when you're planning to produce a product or process on it, what kind of machinery you require, equipment you require, what infrastructure, what kind of plant, factory size, it will all depend upon the physical facilities will depend upon how big is your factory, and how much of production you want to plan out, how much is the capital or money available with you, all those things and will be required. Then plant layout means once you have bought out the plant and machinery, equipment and all, then how are you going to make the arrangement of these physical facilities as a layout. It's like you can say a blueprint of your factory, of how you're going to keep your all physical resources and how the production will be planned. And so the entrepreneur, he will draw a layout. So layout means a plan to show the arrangement, the physical arrangement of the machines and equipment. So finally it has to be drawn out and designed, and accordingly all the equipments will be bought and laid in the factory so that the production can be begun. And then competent and committed workforce. Obviously you require, whether you have to plan out whether you require skilled people, semi-skilled people. You may require some people with expert knowledge like engineers, or with some expert skills, or those who have done some special training and special courses to perform activities at the plant. You may also require some finance people like chartered accountants to decide how to approach to the banks, and the finance knowledge is better with them, and or the engineers are there. So whether you are going to hire them, on what basis you'll be hiring them, what kind of packages you're going to give them, what kind of training you're going to give them, how are you going to motivate them, what incentives you're going to give them. So all those things have to be kept in mind. You have to plan out. So physical and financial resources so once you have hired these people, you will plan out how they're going to work out to turn the physical and financial resources into the desired products. And then the tax planning, you have to know the different tax laws. You should know what kind of tax liability is there to be paid by the company, and what would be the impact on the various business decisions that you've taken, because it's a huge tax liability that is always that always arises when you begin your business. So that has to be borne in mind. And then finally is the 10th point, launching the enterprise. Means after you've worked out on all these areas, finally you will have to place them in order, and you will begin your business. Means you will launch the business, you will make use of all the resources. Means you will mobilize the resources and start the production. And once the production is done, then you have to work out on the distribution of the products, initiate the sale campaign, make use of those aids to trade. Remember, like we have advertising, warehousing. You can make use of warehouses to store your extra stock, excess stock, surplus stock, or you can make use of advertising companies to spread the information of your company. So all those aids to trades, remember, we are using banking, we're using the finance companies. You may also go for insurance companies. You can approach them and go for some insurance policies, how to reduce your risk. Then what kind of transportation will be available, what kind of communication is available. All those aids to trades will help you to keep your business smooth. So so these are the areas that you have to plan out when you want to start a business. Now, one little portion that we had left earlier was Make in India. This is an initiative launched by Government of India. This was launched on 25th September 2014. The idea was to encourage the foreign investors to come down to India and make investments here, put up their plants and factories here so that they can make their products in India. The whole idea was to increase employment in India, because we have a huge labor force. So the labor is easily available here, so we can make use of labor. There'll be good opportunities for employment if such companies begin in India. So that is how the idea was, to encourage the national and multinational companies to manufacture the products in India. And the major objective behind this project is to create jobs and to have skill enhancement. Means to you can say enhance skill in these 25 sectors which I have given here. Like it covers almost every part of industry: automobile industry, construction, IT, pharmaceuticals, space, astronomy, automobile, aviation, electrical, machinery, media, entertainment, railways. Means in any of these sectors they can begin some business and seek the necessary help from the Government of India, and begin the production or give their services in India. So that is Make in India initiative launched by Government of India on 25th September 2014. And the idea and the main objective was to increase the job opportunities in India, and also to enhance, because when foreign companies come here, they come with good technology already they have, so that technology will be shared in India, and that will improve the skill of the Indian labor or Indian people, and this way there'll be good competition, and the Indian people will have good opportunities to learn and improve their skills, right? So after Make in India, our chapter is over, and after understanding Make in India, now we'll solve the last part of the chapter, the exercises given to you here. Again, I've given you some questions where you will explain those factors. So the question is, explain the different factors to be considered by starting a business. So those 10 points, but only writing 10 points is not enough. You have to explain each. As I told you, read the text for that. It's very it's very easy and to understand, which you can write in your own words. Then you have to discuss the program Make in India, which I have already given to you. That same thing you're going to write. And they had that logo, remember? I have shown you. They had that logo Make in India. Means it's like anything that under the roof can be made or processed, and services can be given. Now you will solve the rest of the questions on your own, and if any query you can get back to me. And one case study I've given to you, and I've already solved it for you so that you know how it has to be gone about. Read this case. There are 3 questions given to you, and under 3 questions I have answered you separately, and wherever is your main point you can highlight them by underlining them or writing in other ink, so that your answer should be the presentation is very important in your answers. So make the presentation very neat and very clear, and whatever is asked, try to be descriptive in your answer, because these questions, whenever they are asked, say around for 4 marks, 5 marks, 6 marks, so you need to describe them well enough. Only by just giving in one word is not enough. You have to say why. You have to justify your answer. So this is one example how I have given you how to answer, and in future course I'll keep giving you many such case studies to solve. Okay, so read the pages of the text and read this explanation given to you, and if any query you can get back to me. Thank you.